Thank you.
Pre-folded pens. So you might notice a slight drop in temperature in here. It will be cooler up in the blue. We try to keep the same temperature as it's going to be tonight. So it's going to be upper 30s probably up there, so just be aware. It's going to be a little nippy. So all the big components and the mirror and everything that you're going to see up above all came through these doors right here. You get these double doors. And then this flap lifts up. Some of the components are that big that we had to have this much space to get those in here. And then there's panels right here that's lifted up. This crane usually down the way. There's a 40-ton crane up at the very top of the mountain. All the part components are lifted up. Some of them had to be finagled quite a bit because they're odd shapes. But again, everything came through that door and went up through there. You'll see that up there. Okay, a couple of things of note. Again, I talked about the dome. The dome's 1,000 tons. All these vertical uprights here that you see, including here, these are the supports for the dome. The telescope has a completely different support. It's a separate structure completely. One thing, we didn't want vibrations being communicated from the dome to the telescope. We didn't want the telescope shaking and those kind of things. So all these slanted beams here, those are the supports for the telescope. The telescope itself, all combined, weighs 530 tons. So it's not your garage type telescope. It's a big structure, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. The telescope supports go down 22 feet into the bedrock. Again, keep in mind we're on a 25-mile by 13-mile rock. So a lot of people think, well, what about earthquakes? I mean, does that affect you? They've made some contingencies for that, but as to, so far to date, we haven't been affected by any mechanism. This is pretty solid. The structures for the dome go down about 7 feet. Now, a couple other things out here is a special note. This is a machine. In fact, it's called the Perfect Machine. There's a book out by that title on it. One thing about machines is they wear out. So there's some rather large gears on the telescope to make it turn and rotate. So you can't just go down to Home Depot to a big gear aisle and get gears this size. So these are the backup gears. Now, one thing we hope you take away from this little tour is that this telescope is so well designed, so well built, so well maintained, and we keep it so well updated that that's a testimony to that fact, because the original gears are still in the telescope and they don't show any signs of wear and tear. So they basically have been in and operating for over 80 years for all the testing and all that kind of stuff. So we're so sure we're not going to need them that we built this lab here, a gap optics lab. This is probably the most important piece of equipment on the mountain. So we're not going to take that down to get to it, I don't think. Like I said, that's right now the gears on the computer, on the telescope show no signs of wear and tear. Now we have a lot of other mirrors. We talked about, we have a 48-inch telescope, a 60-inch telescope. We've got other minor mirrors which are used as part of the processing for imaging, and so they all need to be recoded and updated. Again, keep in mind we deal with mirrors here. We don't do all major telescopes anymore are mirrors. So and the coating is on the top surface. It's not like your bathroom mirror. Your bathroom mirror's on the back side. It's all over the top. So periodically we have to bring them down, and the work's done here. We clean them off. We give a bath of hydrochloric acid to get all the old aluminum off of them, and they clean them until it's basically we're sure there's nothing on it, oil or anything. And then for those particular mirrors that get mounted is this vacuum machine over here. And they get mounted vertically. Now inside that there's a bunch of filaments with aluminum on them. And this will be evacuated, all the air will be pulled out. And when they fire this up, it basically creates a cloud of plasma inside there that coats everything. It coats the inside, it coats the mirror, it coats all of it. So that's the process. Bring them out, check it out, make sure it's right. Take it back to the particular telescope it came out. Now,
what's the coating?
It's just aluminum. We just use aluminum, that's all.
I'm thinking a mirror would be bright and shiny.
It is. It's actually, it's about 87% reflective with aluminum.
The stuff you spray on or coat can be polished?
Well, it doesn't need to be. The aluminum actually, cloud ones.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But a lot of the older telescopes before these were built used silver. Well, silver tarnishes so fast,
Yes.
constantly, and then you're scratching it, you're scoring it, you're causing issues. Aluminum's not there. The rest of these mirrors we maintain on demand. You open up a dome, bats come in, birds come in, they like to leave stuff everywhere. There may be particulates in the air that we want catch in time, so we maintain those on demand. The 200-inch mirror, obviously, we're fitted there, and you'll see it has its own chamber upstairs. We do that on a 2-year schedule, so about every 2 years, we take it down for about 8 to 10 days. Again, the same process, clean it off with hydrochloric acid. I mentioned, again, the dome is 1,000 tons. This is 530-ton structure to support the telescope. So we're looking at about 3 million pounds. And the way I look at it is 3 million pounds to support the reflective effort of less than an ounce of aluminum. That gives you an example of the magnitude of this observatory. Okay. Other things to note, when this was built, you notice a lot of the structure has rivets in it. There's still riveting battleships together in those days and those kind of things. And welding was a brand new technology. So they thought, well, okay, we're going to try both. So a lot of these structures will notice they're welded and they're riveted. So it's kind of like having a belt and suspenders. You got a backup plan in case one of your supports fails. So we're doing the same thing. So you guys want to go see the telescope, I think?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad nobody said no, because we're going anyway. Okay, you want to follow me? We'll head upstairs. Everybody okay with stairs?
Yes.
Okay. Because this is how the astronomers get their exercise. We don't let them take the elevators. Okay, now under these stairs here, there's reservoirs of oil and oil pumps, and they have significance. I'll explain when we get up here. Yeah, so I get you guys to move here on the trap door. Yeah, you guys get unruly, I just push the button. That's how we get ready. Okay, so welcome to the Big Eye. That's what it was affectionately called back in the day when it was being built. Keep in mind, from a historical standpoint, this all happened in the 20s. Hale was able to get $6 million out of Rockefeller, which is the highest scientific grant at the time. $1928, that's quite a bit of money. We couldn't do a site survey over $6 million today. So. But again, the one thing that is most impressive to me is what they did with pencils, graph paper, trig charts, log charts, and slide rules. And there was no CAD CAM, there was no computers. The precision that this facility is built with, and the tolerances are so just impressive. A lot of what you're seeing in front of you here had to be invented just to make this work. Again, we went from a 100-inch telescope to a 200-inch. That's double the size, but no big deal, right? Well, everything that went into the mount for the Mount Wilson 100-inch had to be exponentially increased to support what was going to be done with this. So some of the innovations that came along. Well, first off, which way is the telescope facing? Okay. That way? That way? It's kind of a trick question. Okay. The mount, this is the equatorial mount, so this is parallel, the mount itself is parallel to the Earth's axis. Okay, we do that for very specific reasons, I'll explain. The telescope itself is facing up. We call that park position, so it's resting. It's where it's the least amount of stress on the telescope itself. Again, we're talking 530 tons. Imagine, gravity's pulling on the mirrors at 20 tons. So if you even tip it slightly, it's going to create stresses.
So where is the mirror?
The mirror's going to be right behind that study. Unfortunately, we don't get to see the mirror. That's why I kind of like to show you guys the stunt double from downstairs. So,
If the 20-inch mirror was built today, would it be so massive?
a 200-inch? Actually, no, it wouldn't be. The University of Arizona can actually has the ability to do that now with different materials and stuff like that. But for this day, and like I said, again, the material that it took to build and make the mirror was an invention in a sense as well. So a pretty impressive structure, pretty massive structure.
So what direction is it pointing? Straight
Okay,
up?
the telescope is facing straight up right now,
Yep.
but the mount is facing equatorially
Thank you.
to the axis to the north. One of the innovations that Hubble was basically directly responsible for is telescopes of the day all had this big bar, and they'd come down, and you could never see north. You could never see anything around north because of that bar. So one of his requests was, I want to be able to see north. So the engineers got together, and they, part of the design program, they designed this big horseshoe structure. Okay. Great, huh? Because now the telescope would lead down. You can see North Pole. You can see all kinds of circumpolar stuff. Great innovation. The problem with the horseshoe, this massive, is it bends over, it's going to want to open up. So the bright engineers at Westinghouse built the mount, the structure. All these little holes right here, they put gravity-driven mechanical actuators. So as the horseshoe moved back and forth, it would automatically adjust and accommodate all the stresses. So we got that problem resolved. Now, as you can see, this whole thing rotates right on this here and then down here as well. So what did we use to rotate the telescope on? We can't use bearings, roller bearings or ball bearings, that kind of stuff. They'd be flattening as we're sitting here looking at it. Okay. Again, vibration is something we don't want in a telescope ever. It ruins all the images. So, a bright engineer at Westinghouse again, named Evans, he had been working on gun turrets for battleships and changing them out so they were not chain driven. They're actually going to ride on oil. So I mentioned the oil reservoirs down below in the pumps. So his idea was to pump, there's 4 pads here, and 3 pads down in here, pump oil at pressure about 750 pounds per square inch, and lift, the structure basically lifted up maybe about 15 thousandths of an inch. What does that give us? That gives us basically a friction-free surface for this to turn on. In fact, it was so friction-free, they had to put friction back in. Again, one of the stories is a worker up there put his milk bottle on the thing and it started to move. So this whole structure through here, this whole mount, to make its rotation, it's done by a 112 horsepower motor. You have a sewing machine? Your sewing machine motor basically is what drives this whole pump thing. So pretty impressive. I mean, that's the engineering. I'm a physicist. Sometimes I don't have much to do with engineers, but I sure love good engineering. This is just a phenomenal. So one of the other issues is going to be when you're doing something this big, about 20 tons of a telescope back here. So when I rotate it, that mirror is going to want to bend. It's going to want to pull that end down. So a very bright Caltech engineer named Mark Surya came up with a trussing system. With shorter trusses here, longer trusses up there, and as the scope moves, it automatically keeps all the optical elements in alignment. Okay, so Mark Surya's got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Not for this. Him and his dad invented a machine called the Moviola, which is still being used for movie editing. But again, one of those innovative concepts that deserve probably more recognition. I mentioned this is the aluminizing tank for the 200 here. This lifts up, this comes over here. Now Steve has had the blessing of actually cleaning the mirror off, the glass blank with hydrochloric acid. So he's survived. He's still alive.
Another question.
Yes.
When it moves, can you hear it?
I haven't. In fact, no, because I was here yesterday. It was moving.
It's
So
very quiet.
yeah, it's very quiet. Extremely.
So you don't hear the hydraulic.
Even the dome moving. You don't even hear the dome moving. Awesome.
So why is the dome
What was the
That's a good question. Okay. You're in a huge. Why is the dome reflective inside? You're in a huge thermos bottle. The outside of the dome is steel. There's a 4-foot gap, and this is all aluminum on the inside. At one time, it was the largest commercial aluminum application in the world. It's probably other things taking its place, but that actually just helps with temperature control. I mentioned that we have to keep the dome at the temperature it's going to be that night. Because once we open these shutters up here, these go again open 30 feet. We don't want a bunch of burbling air and bad air up in here. So if the temperatures are the same, the air's not going to move anywhere. So it's going to help us with our imaging better. So as much as we'd love to move the telescope for you, like I said yesterday, people got lucky because they got to see the dome move and the telescope move. That's very infrequent. They don't let us touch the controls. They do trust us with the diagram and also with the model. So if you want to kind of turn over here and talk a little bit on how the telescope functions. Okay, so again, the telescope's facing straight up. The light comes down through this and hits the 200-inch mirror. There's a 40-inch hole in the center. And this mirror is not flat. It's a parabola. It's a very good parabola. And it redirects the light back up here to prime focus, which is that. We'll see it better when we get upstairs, all the way to the top. Now, you might notice that there's a little astronomer sitting up there. This is a remnant of the days of heroic astronomy, because today's kind of a little chilly, but it gets a lot colder than this in here. So in the original days, we don't image. We don't view. They did imaging through photographic plates. They had 5x7 photographic plates. So his job was up there, look at a reticle, keep that star on track, and take the plates in and out. Well, some of these exposures might be 6, 8, 10 hours long. So he's set up to the top of the telescope, inside the telescope. There's no coffee. There's no facilities, so that's a good thing.
Are you saying he's visible in that drawing?
Well, this is a cutaway. You can't, like I said, when you get above, you can see what he's down inside.
Okay, I thought you were telling me I could see.
He's right there.
Okay, you're telling me where he is.
He's right there.
You can see.
He's sitting in a chair. The floor up there is concave, so as the telescope moves, the chair rolls around. So when this is slewing, in other words, when it's moving fast,
I understand.
that had to be a good ride. Okay, so he's freezing cold up there. They had the benefit of those old thermal suits that the military provided for $1 a piece. Plug yourself in, keep yourself warm, and again, that's why we call it the heroic days of astronomy. Now they sit in this room over here. The windows darkened there. They have warmth. They've got the internet. They've got video games. They've got coffee. Restrooms are. They got everything they need in there. Okay, they're all limpsy. This is when the astronomers were real astronomers. Okay. So any questions about how? It's quite simple. Light comes in, gets reflected, goes up to prime focus. We still use prime focus about 30% of the time. Most of the time, there's a wide-angle infrared camera up there. There's a wide-angle camera and an and near infrared cameras up there. 70% of the time, we put a convex mirror in here, a concave mirror in here, excuse me, and redirect the light back down through this tube, which is this tube you can see right here. Light comes down and goes to what we call a cascading focus. That's what this cage is. This cage isn't in the drawing, but that's the equipment. We put different equipment there tonight. It looks like it's the triple spectrometer right here. It's going to look at 3 different wavelengths of light and break that all apart, give us a great idea of what they're looking at. They're actually looking at galaxies that they're having a hard time figuring out why parts are emission and why parts are absorption. In other words, some parts seem to be kicking out light, some seem to be sucking in light. I'm not sure what's going on, so we're going to be looking at that. So as I mentioned, we do have a model here. Again, I can't move the telescope, but we can move the model. So I'm going to need a volunteer. Are you volunteering? Sure. What's your name?
Lynn, L-I-N.
L-A-N, okay. So this is Lynn. He's going to be working for Caltech for this simulation. He's going to be our telescope operator. Okay. So what Lynn's day starts off, he comes in late in the afternoon, he goes down to what we call the monastery, meets with the researchers. The astronomers are going to be there tonight. They have dinner together. They talk about certain things. So he has a feel for what they do. And when he's done there, he's going to go outside and check the skies, make sure it looks good, and then come check his instrumentation. Make sure the weather is going to be acceptable. Open. Okay, when don't we open the dome? Rain.
Snow.
Snow, yeah. It's
Fire.
okay,
Overcast.
which one?
Fire.
Fire. If there's smoke in the air, those kind of things. Anything that's, because Lynn's job is to protect that telescope. That's his main job. Yeah, he's going to work with the researchers, astronomers, but that's his responsibility.
So you were saying that the telescope is booked every day of the year, practically.
Pretty much, yeah.
And if I assume I pay to come use it,
You do, yeah.
and if my thing is canceled, do I?
You go to the back of the list
Back
again.
of the list.
You have to resubmit your proposal all over again.
Wow.
A lot of astronomers get anywhere from 2, 3, 4 nights.
Okay.
So the chances are going to get some data at least as good, but there's times when that doesn't happen. So we do have special events. Like last night was a very special event. They did an occultation of a star by Neptune. That only happens every once in a while. In fact, we discovered Neptune's rings by the last time that happened. So that is like a priority. But anybody else, if Lynn shuts them down, they take their chance on the next night, or they resubmit the proposal. So Lynn's checked everything out, says we're good for tonight. Okay, we're going to open up. Okay, I'm going to make sure that's at rest position. So he's going to get the coordinates from the researcher that they want to go to. Like I said, tonight they're probably going to look at several galaxies for what they're going to do. So let's say you can do 2 buttons at once. Push south and east at the same time if you want, or south and east. Because we always start at the east. Remember, because the Earth rotates. So the design of this telescope, it's big, it's massive, but it's really quite simple. We get it on a target, and then we just track for the motion of the Earth, and we're good. Have a little fun. Get aggressive. Come on. The telescope moves about that speed. So when you're in here at night and it's moving, it's pretty intimidating. It's like, whoa, the thing's coming right at you. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so Lynn gets on the first target. Researchers is doing his data. Go ahead and play around and move where you want to from here. So we're going to a secondary target now, and Lynn gets it set on wherever. Okay. So again, that was slewing. We're moving, when we move from target to target or to a target, that's called slewing. That's when the telescope moves really fast. Otherwise, it moves at the speed of a clock. Very, very, the time as the Earth rotates. So we're halfway through the night, and then all of a sudden gets an alarm on his phone that there's a front coming through. Okay. Goes to check your weather. Maybe it looks like rain may be coming in. So what do you think you got to do now?
Reposition.
Okay. But first you want to know, what do you want to do first?
Oh, shut the thing.
Okay, that'll happen too. Just before that, though. These guys have been tough lately.
Yeah, I don't know.
Go tell the astronomers. I said, I'm sorry, but we've got the situation. We have to close you down. Okay?
yeah.
Then you're right. Then you put it back in park. You do all that kind of stuff. And maybe that happened at midnight. Maybe at 2 o'clock the front's gone through. It's no big deal. But they stay here all night. Just because they got shut down doesn't mean they stop. Okay, so Lynn's going to open back up for them again, hopefully, and they get more data. Again, some nights they're up. Okay. So you want to go ahead and park that for us? So the night's over. They got all the information they need. They're happy researchers. They're going to head back to the monastery, get some breakfast, go to bed. And usually, most of these runs last into the early hours of the morning. 5, 6, 4 or 5 in the morning a lot of times. Okay. Right. So Lynn, I thought you did a great job as our telescope operator. And in recognition of that, we have a badge for you. Palomar Observatory Telescope Operator. Appreciate your help for the simulation. Okay. You guys can't buy this from the gift shop. You want to get it from participating like Lynn did. And Steve checks eBay too, so don't find it on there. Okay. Okay. Thanks. Appreciate it.
No, you will not.
So there's a lot of things going on with this structure. Again, I don't want to underemphasize what it took to build this, but in a sense it is a very simple machine, a very perfect machine. It doesn't wear out. There's a lot of good things going on with it. But the key element for the whole thing, none of this would have mattered if the mirror didn't work. It was no good. And believe it or not, that's happened in other observatories.
Is the mirror concave?
It's
convex?
it's a parabola. Okay. So I'm gonna step in. You bet. Okay. So the story behind the mirror is, like I mentioned, he got $6 million from Rockefeller to build the whole facility, everything up here. He asked for quotes on who could build the mirror. They were looking at fused quartz. We got fused quartz countertops. It's a good material. It's great. You can put hot stuff on it, cold stuff on it. Doesn't affect it at all. Almost ideal for what they're looking for. So they contracted with GE, General Electric, to build the mirrors. So General Electric got started. Built. Started off with something about this size. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. They could only get about 60 inches. That's as good as they could do. And unfortunately, they spent a tenth of the budget on a mirror that was never going to work. So next step up was there was a company in Germany called Schmidt who had developed this material, and for some reason let the patent run out. Well, a smart company in New York called Corning jumped on it, and they made this product. You guys have it in your home, I'm sure. What is it? Pyrex, okay. Pyrex Corning ware, okay. Similar to quartz in a lot of ways. It's not, it's resistant to temperature change, stuff like that. So it, again, it would be ideal. So they had to come up with a design for the mirror base. We got dinner, didn't we?
Yeah.
So if you notice, there's a couple different structures within the mirror. Now, this is not really a scale model of the mirror. This is a scale model of the blank, because it's not coded, it's not parabolic. But you can see these little truncated triangles. This is strictly just to reduce the weight. If they hadn't done that, that mirror up there would weigh 40 tons instead of 20 tons. Okay. So this takes all the bulk of the weight out there. It doesn't affect the strength of the material. The round ones, again, were one of those innovations I talked about. Actually, were to hold, again, gravity-driven mechanical actuators. So as the mirror tipped, it would force the mirror to always stay in alignment. Just a brilliant concept. So Corning does the same thing. They build, in fact, this is probably maybe the reason part of the war. Build bigger and bigger ones. A lot of the blanks they made actually ended up in a telescope somewhere else. So they got to the point they got up to about 120-inch blank, and they figured, we're going to shoot for the 200-inch. See what we can do. So again, a lot of people were following the progress of this telescope. It was a big deal in the country. It was one of the positives in the Depression between the Boulder Dam, Hoover Dam, as we call it now, and this. That's what people were just interested in. They wanted to know what's going on. So word got out about the pour. A broadcaster named Lowell Thomas, which some of you may remember who it was. They set him up in a booth. I imagine him kind of like a sports announcer. He's like, okay, they're getting ready to lay it in there, and just doing a play-by-play of what's going on. And they set up a stage for some dignitaries to be there. Obviously, OSHA didn't exist back then because this glass is about 3,000 degrees when they're pouring it in there. And they're having people walk by on gangways and those kind of things. So the pour started off actually pretty well. They had 3 different ladlers going on. It was flowing really nice. And all of a sudden these fire bricks, refractory bricks, some of them started floating up in the glass. It's like, uh-oh, what's happening in that? They tried pulling them out with big forceps. It wasn't going to work. And it was one of those things, okay, Lowell, shut up. We're done. There's nothing here to see. You know, everybody go home. They did what they call a quick annealing. They cooled it down really quickly. And they found out the problem right away. The glass is at 3,000 degrees. Stainless steel melts at around 2,500 degrees. That's what they use rods and bolts to hold the bricks in place. So they melted and flipped it up. So they figured out how to fix that problem. Corning at this time had just a brilliant man named George Macaulay working there. He was a materials genius. And this Pyrex that's in this mirror and the ones I use is not the one you have at home, obviously. It's not for baby bottles. This is specifically developed for telescopes. But again, he figured it out. So they go to do a second pour. They go to do a re-pour. And they do it on Sunday morning. Remember, everybody went to church back in those days. Most of the employees at Corning didn't even know what was going on. So just a skeleton crew was there, just the people who were necessary. The pour went obviously went very well because there's the evidence of that. They put it, they covered it, and they put it in the annealing of it again, and they cooled it down for about 10 months. They very slowly cooled it down. Again, George Macaulay just had a feeling about something, and it was that time of year where they started getting a lot of weather, a lot of storms. The annealing oven was in the basement. Rivers had been known to overflow, so he had them lift the annealing oven up above the 50-year historical flood mark. It's a good thing he did because it flooded, basement flooded, and it got within just inches of the top. That would have been catastrophic. Obviously, again, it survived. So, and based on George Macaulay's intuition. Okay, they're done with it. It's ready to go. They're ready to ship it out to Caltech. They obviously put out a lot of bids to see which rail. They're going to carry it by rail across the country. The contractor was with 3 different rail companies. They designed a special container for it. They're going to carry it vertically. It's armor plated. Anybody have any idea why they armor plated?
They hit a bridge.
Pardon?
Yes, they hit a bridge.
Well, luckily there were no bridges like we have nowadays. They were worried that someone was going to take a pot shot at it.
Vandalism?
Yeah, and try to get their name in history by being the one that hurt the big eye.
Yeah.
Okay, they had armed guards on it. So it moved across the country about 15 miles an hour. Literally thousands of people lined the railways and waved with big eyes.
Wow.
Okay. There's lots of historical pictures and all kind of stuff like that. Well, I don't do the pageant wave. I'm sorry. Mark does the pageant wave. I don't do that. Okay. Got to Caltech without incident. Got it in there. Into the optics lab. They started doing the preliminary grind to get it down to the basic parabola shape. Took about 5.5 tons of glass off to get down to that point. They're working on it. This they knew it was going to take years to get this done. Unfortunately, 1941 came along, and so did what else? World War II came along. Okay, so a lot of the resources were pulled off and put into the war effort. So they weren't available. December of 1945, war's over. They come back to work. They spent almost 2 years refining it, getting to where they thought it was pretty good. Day comes to ship it down to the mountain here. They plan on doing it over 2 days. Check the weather reports. Okay, it's going to be great weather, no problem, no issues. Put it on a flatbed truck. Got it down to Carlsbad the first day. This was about like 3 o'clock in the morning. And then, the second day they start towards the mountain. And by the time they get to the bottom of the mountain, it's raining. Start at the mountain, it's sleeting, it's snowing. In spite of all that, you guys all came up the S6, right? The road? Okay, that's the road this came up, on a flatbed truck, without the benefit of asphalt roads and all that stuff. Got here, came in those doors you came in, came up through that, and got installed. They knew there was more testing to do. They had this Hartman screen here. I call it a spaghetti string right here. But they put it at the very top, set it on there, and they'd focus on one star, So the star would come through each one of those holes, and the way it would, it was indicated on the mirror base, told them where they had to do more work, more grinding, more whatever. Opticians went to work. I mean, they were perfectionists. They wanted to be perfect. Basically, like I said, they almost spent 2 more years on it, to the point where they actually were licking their thumb with optician's rouge and taking molecule off here and there to get it done. Obviously, the astronomers are like, okay, that's enough. Give us the telescope. But to the optician's credit, that mirror is so close to being perfect that it's within millions of an inch of a perfect ground level. If it was as big as the United States, you might have a hill or a valley 2 or 3 inches tall. So to put that in perspective, how perfect of a mirror that is. Okay, we're going to go upstairs and give you a different view. A couple different views first.
That's a cool thing. Huh?
Yeah, it's pretty cheap. From China.
Well, there you go.
Okay, you come down a little closer this way. We're not too big a group. Usually we have about 30 people in a tour. People must have known that we're closing out the season because all 3 tours today didn't equal 30 people. So. Pretty close. Okay, so this is a little different perspective of the telescope. Obviously, you can see where prime focus is up here. That's where that astronomer was sitting in the diagram down below. So again, here's our shutters that open up 30 feet. We open up each way. There's a screen here you guys can see. If we don't need to have the telescope down this low, we'll bring the screen up. That helps keep the birds and the bats and all the extra junk out of the observatory. So all our equipment that we have here works off the principle of CCD cameras. You guys all have cell phones? Mm-hmm. Okay. They're great cameras. I mean, if you want your cell phone camera to work better, put it in the freezer before you take a picture with it. It actually would enhance your picture. You may not notice it that much, but it helps. But we keep our cameras about minus 171 degrees Fahrenheit by using liquid nitrogen. So we got to take liquid nitrogen up there. So how do you think we get up there? Well, there's this steps right here. Yeah. Did you say Nobody takes the steps up there carrying liquid nitrogen. Okay. I'll be honest with you. That's more of an emergency case. In case we need to get down from up there without power.
There's a rail there.
This is an elevator right here. And this maintains its horizontal, it runs up this ramp over here, and it stays horizontal all the way up to here. And there's like a little gap that they have to step in, off of that. So that's how we get the nitrogen up there. So a few of the things we have to take care of. We do get snow up here. That white stuff, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but we get a couple feet at a time. We get a couple feet on top of the dome. Where'd my operator go? Oh. Go.
Me?
Do we open the dome when there's snow?
No.
Okay. So we got to get the snow off. So you get to climb up there, walk around this way, come up here. There's this nice little ladder right here. And you get to go through that little hole. So Lynn, is that your job? That's not your job though, okay, because you're the night operator. So.
I have a crew that does that.
Yeah. And the crew changes constantly because what's nice about this ladder is it leans out over the floor as you're going up. So you go up there. In the old days, they'd tie a rope around themselves and shovel and get the snow moving up. Once you get it moving off the top, it'll pretty much go like an avalanche. There's a picture. No. There's a picture of a car down in the data center here that parked too close to the dome. And it's about this tall now because several tons of snow hit your car. It's going to squish it. So.
Do you get freezing rain? In other words, ice coating.
We can, yeah, sure.
And so it melts itself off?
Yeah. Well, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
We have to make sure, again, though, that's a good point. We can't open the dome if that's out there on there.
Okay.
We don't risk anything to damage your telescope, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here you can see the cover. See this black area right here? That's the cover for the mirror. It opens up like a flower petal, so it opens up when we're ready to use it. Otherwise, we protect the mirror. We keep it covered.
So is that like hydraulic lift? Electric?
Oh, Steve, is that hydraulic? I don't think it's just caped.
Air?
It's just mechanical, yeah. Remember, this is pretty.
The motor
This
is
is
there on the side,
yeah.
and it's just chained all the way around by gearing.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll get you.
That's a good question. I hadn't had that before. Okay. So again, it's a great perspective of the telescope. Again, we mentioned prime focus. We mentioned Cassegrain focus. We also have a coup d'eil focus here, and a coup d'eil focus that goes down through the back here. Obviously, we have other mirrors that redirect that. They never get, I shouldn't say never, very, very seldom ever get used. It's pretty much 30 to 70. Okay, let's go on down here to the south end. We'll talk a little bit about why So again, the part that you guys are on right here over, that rotates. The whole thing rotates. The dome will go around full circle in less than 4 minutes. And it's so smooth that if it started up, you would swear I'm moving. It took them literally years to hand grind the rails that the trucks ride on. They're perfectly level and they're so smooth. And maybe a couple of shoes after 80 years, but basically you don't even know you're moving. Like I said, I was in here yesterday when they moved the dome, and if I hadn't been looking, I wouldn't even known the dome was moving. It's so quiet, so vibration free. So we mentioned Edwin Hubble and his desire to understand the universe better. Back in his day, and it wasn't just him. But 100 years ago, it was pretty much thought that our galaxy was the universe. That's all there was to it. Yeah, there were these little spiral fuzzy things out there, but they were more annoying to most astronomers than anything, except for Hubble and some of his collaborators. They started looking at those more closely, again using the 100-inch telescope for one thing, and realized those are pretty far away. No concept of how far. We got to that point that we could actually determine that. And the more he looked, and the farther he looked, he was finding more and more. So there's some that are far away, there's some that are really far away, and there's some that are really, really far away, and they're all moving away from us. All the objects that we look at, because we use spectroscopy for most things, give us a spectrum of what's in the material. It's a spectrum, and if I'm standing here looking at light, I'm going to get that spectrum. Well, if the light starts moving, especially if it's moving away from me, it's going to redshift. It's a Doppler effect. So it's going to get. So by redshift, we know things are moving away from us or moving towards us. There are a few galaxies moving towards us. Andromeda Galaxy is one. You've got 5 billion years to get rid of beachfront property, though. But almost everything else is moving away from us at tremendous speeds. And the hard thing Hubble had dealing with was that the objects he was seeing that were the farthest away were moving away from us the fastest. So, Big Bang Theory. That's kind of that was the basis for cosmology. Again, he had difficulty with those things. The 100-inch just wasn't giving him what he needed. That was the drive for him to get to 200. He did some imaging, he did nothing, hardly anything, and didn't really do much work. So it was left to his successors, so Martin Schmidt and Alan Sandage, to come along and proof out his work. And Martin Schmidt had his own thing going on. He wanted to know distances better. So he worked with Cepheid variables. They're a variable star that, wherever we looked in our galaxy, apparently they may look brighter or dimmer, but at the absolute level, they all were really consistent. So when we look at their absolute brightness, they would be the same throughout their cycle. So using that concept, we could tell, because if we know they're absolute the same brightness, if something's dimmer, that means it's farther away, right? Okay? So we know the distance, and there's, we can calculate those distances. Well then, because we're looking at galaxies outside our own, they have the same Cepheid variables. So now we can tell how far those galaxies are. Okay? That's expanding. That was one of Martin Smith's big contributions. Alan Sandage and him worked together on the Hubble dilemma about why are things the farthest away moving away the fastest. The development of Big Bang Theory. They developed what is now called the Hubble constant. So we can apply that to galaxies. That basically kind of tells us where they are, how far away they are, how fast they're moving, just by the parameters that I just talked about. World War II ends, and we got all this radar and all this radio equipment sitting around. And why not, let's point it to the sky and see what we find. So that was basically the birth of radio astronomy, and they started detecting all these objects out in, obviously way out in interstellar space with just extreme amounts of energy, and they called them quasi-stellar units or quasars. Do you have a quasar TV? I had a quasar TV. I mean, that's the best TV I've ever had. They don't make it anymore, so. But so they turned their attention to find out what are these things. Quasi-stellar means it's a star-like. Well, the more they looked at it, there's no way a star could generate that much energy. The more they looked at them, the more they found that, again, these were galaxies tremendous distances away, emitting tremendous amounts of energy, and that's where the concept of supermassive black holes came from. So, again, contribution to that particular sense of the science. Steve likes to say, this is not a discovery facility. This particular telescope, we have scopes that are, and it's important to realize that when this looks at the sky, it looks at basically in an area about the size of the full moon. So it's not a very big opening for how big it is, but we get great resolution at what we look at. The 48-inch, which is the Sawicki transient facility, it looks at basically 14 full moons by 14 full moons, so it looks at a bigger picture. It discovers things. And when it discovers things, it sends it through. Sometimes those discoveries are huge in number, hundreds of thousands. Luckily, we're tied to a supercomputer down at UCSD that will look at those things, and based on parameters will tell us, okay, this is what we need to look at. Oftentimes, the 60 inches used to corroborate that. Very seldom is this one, because this is busy. This telescope is booked as much as it possibly can be. So that information is dispersed to other observatories throughout the world. As a facility, we do a lot of discovery, make a lot of contributions this way. This one mainly, though, is to go look for things that someone has told us about. So,
How many other big scopes are there like this?
okay, this now is 19 in size. As far as a single mirror effective telescope, this is still number one. Most of the bigger ones now use segmented mirrors or hexagonal shape. Again, I refer to the simplicity of this telescope. One single mirror is really simple to deal with. I just have to turn the corner around. Okay, there's a telescope on the books with Caltech's involved. It's called 30 meter. It'll be as big as this ring all the way around. That's how big the mirror will be. Okay. It's going to have almost 500 mirrors. Each mirror needs its own computing to keep it aligned, keep it things. So as we get bigger and we get more complex. A lot of things about this telescope astronomers love. It tracks unbelievably well. Once it's on object, it stays there. And focusing is great. There's a lot of great things. But this is not just a research facility. It's an engineering facility. We develop things. The things that are on this telescope right now, the early developers and designers never even imagined. We talked about exoplanets, planets around other stars. I'm pretty sure 100 years ago, most of them probably believed there were planets around other stars. But seeing them, no way. That's never going to happen. That's totally impossible. The stars are too bright, they're too small, too far away. With the use of the adaptive optics programs, which I alluded to the lab down below, we now look directly and image planets around other stars. So we're doing things that were impossible at one point. And then who knows what tomorrow's going to bring? Because of the engineering that goes into this, we're constantly upgrading this facility.
Question.
Yes.
Has this facility contributed to the study of the moon in terms of looking at the moon through
No.
this?
No. This is the moon is so close to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would serve no purpose to do that. To be honest, thank you. My 11-inch telescope that I have at home is probably one of the best tools for looking at the moon and studying the moon. We have orbiters around the moon now. They do phenomenal work. I mean, they can pick out rocks now from their stuff we could never do. That's just way too close within our focal range to deal with that.
What does it cost to book?
Well, I could throw out a number, but keep in mind that this place was paid for a long time ago. We get revenue from all the engineering and research and stuff like that. So this place is cheap. I think the next least expensive telescope on a major scale like this to use costs about 10 times more. So put it in perspective. I would give you a dollar figure, but I'm always afraid it's changed for this long. But again, we have 4 partners. Obviously Caltech, JPL, Yale, or Yale as I call them, and then the Combined University of China. Combined Observatories of China. So those are the 4 main. Those are the people that get to put their proposals in. They're the ones that get to spend time on this telescope. Keep in mind again, a lot of times the primary researcher is not here. He's back at his own facility, sends a grad student here, or they can come and set up one day, go home, and they do everything remotely. We can do everything remotely that they want to do as far as accumulating data. Again, one of the biggest problems we have is we are piling up data like you wouldn't believe. There's so much. Just the Zwicky Transit facility, if it gets 100,000 hits in one night, there's no way to look at all those. And we don't really need to. A lot of them are, and what they're looking for is changes. Okay, that wasn't there the last time it came through. Now it is. Well, now it's gone. Now I'm looking at it. So those kind of things they're looking at, they're looking for. Hopefully, they want to catch things that are appearing that weren't there before, and then they could study them. They could figure out what's going on. A lot of it's supernovas or novas of some type. So, but between all that and a lot of other research that's going on, it's that exoplanet research. My wife and I got to sit in. We call it dosing in the dome night. We get a ride with the astronomer and do his work. He had developed a special filter, which I can't tell you anything about it yet because he hasn't released his scientific findings on it. But it's one of those things, again, engineering at a cutting edge level all the time being done here. So this old telescope, I mean, the structure's been in operation for over 80 years. It's been working for about 71 years now, almost. It's still doing cutting edge science. It's still reaching further and further and further out in space. It's still doing really great things. And George, Ellery Hale had a motto. He said, make no small plans, dream no small dreams. And we personally feel that this is a great example of that motto. Just going out and doing bigger and better and greater and keep expanding. Help us to learn more. We still don't know our universe very well. So even with as much as we've learned in the last 100 years, we have a lot more to go. But this tool still proves that it can be a part of it. It can be a cutting-edge facility. So we're not a museum anymore. So the next time you talk to your friends, you can tell them, Palomar's still alive. It still works, and it's still doing cutting-edge research and engineering to make, to keep pushing science forward. On behalf of Caltech, we really appreciate you guys coming and taking the tour. We'd come up anyway, but